Alright, for those that have been following my Corvette restoration project videos, I have another video for you today. I'm going to be replacing the fuel sender unit out of the fuel tank, and I'm also going to be replacing these crappy bubble tail lights. I bought these bubble tail lights thinking I would like them because my original ones were all cracked and crazed and ugly looking, and I bought them, and right after I put them on I didn't like them, and they leaked a little water in. They're kind of El Cheapo, so I got some LED ones I'm going to put in from Corvette Central. I'm going to show you. I've already got the fuel sender unit out. It takes 8 bolts to take it out, and there's 3 hoses to take off, fuel hoses and fuel return and vapor lines that have to come off, and it's a little tight in there. That's probably the biggest problem with the whole thing, is getting those hoses off. But once you get the 8 bolts out, you can wiggle that thing out through the hole. You don't have to drop the fuel tank. I was very happy about that. I did some searches on the internet about it, and everybody said you could take them out without taking the tank off. So that's what I was able to do today, and I'm going to discuss what was wrong with it and the problem I was having with it. Okay, so let's go on and take a look at the LED lights that I have. I got these from Corvette Central. And I've been looking for some Corvette, or some LED lights for my car, and couldn't find any. They had some LED bubble lights, which I didn't like. Like I already said, I hated those bubble lights I got. But this kit here came from Corvette Central, and the part number 493017, red LED tail light, flat, 1974 to 79. And they are cool looking. I think I'm gonna like these a lot. They're not bubble, they're flat, and supposedly they fit right in. It has some adapter pieces here. Comes with a hardware kit. It's got some Y connectors that go on, because what this does is eliminate the reverse lights, which so did my bubble tail lights I had back on the car. It eliminates the reverse lights and makes 4 light system. We have 4 running lights, and then 4 brake lights, and then 2 directionals on each side instead of the reverse light there. It also comes with an electronic flasher, which you're going to need to flash the LED bulbs, because the LEDs are probably not going to have low enough resistance to allow the regular thermal flashers to work. So probably be using that electronic flasher for that. And you'll see that it has some anchor nuts, I think they call it, and some plates that go in. All comes as a kit. They have individual part numbers on them, but they all come as a kit together under that one part number 493017. It's about $230. But I'm thinking that's going to look a lot better than those stupid bubble tail lights and the original ones that I have that were all cracked and messed up. So I'm going to upgrade to LEDs, I think. Also from Corvette Central, I bought a fuel sender that we talked about already. There's the part number to it. Covers years 78 through 81. It's the fuel meter. It's got the gas inlet. Comes with a gasket. And you can, like I said, you can wiggle them out through that body. You don't have to drop the tank, which is very nice. So here's the old one and the new one. It's pretty obvious which one's which. And I also, it didn't come with it, but I also purchased a new boot, because my other one was all messed up. This here captures any gas that you might spill when you're filling it, and has a little drain tube that drains the fuel out underneath the car. Prevents you from getting it all over your gas tank and all over the paint and all that. So the problem I was having was my fuel gauge was reading incorrectly, and if you looked at one of my other videos, you can see where I went through my center console, totally rebuilt my gauge package with a new printed circuit, got all my gauges working. Which I knew it wasn't going to fix my fuel gauge. I knew the problem was the sender, and the sender had some extra resistance in the line, and I'm going to show you that. You can see right here is the actual sender itself. It's a potentiometer that's tied to a float, and that changes the resistance that goes to the gauge, which allows you to know how much fuel you have in your tank. The gauge system in this car, like all the other GM cars, for a long time now, are balanced coil gauges, which are very nice. They don't need a constant voltage regulator. It doesn't matter what the voltage input to the gauge is, it always reads accurate. It just needs a variable resistance at the end of the line, which is either going to be tank sender like this, or a temp sender, or oil pressure sender, and allows the gauge to work. My problem here was a gas gauge for many years now from GM. It's not that way now because they have a different way of doing it, but it's 0 to 90 ohms. 0 being empty and 90 ohms being full. And my gauge was reading too full, and caused me actually to run out of fuel right when I first got the car, because I didn't know the gauge didn't work. It was reading close to full, 3/4 of a tank, and I actually ran out of gas, and then I figured out I had a problem with the sender. The simple way to figure out what's wrong with the sender is just to go across the connections. Here's the ground connection, and then the other connection is right here, and this goes right to the potentiometer. And my problem was extra resistance in the line right on the other side of this connector right here, and I'll show it to you. See if we can position this thing in such a way. Right there. You can see that connection right there. It's just a wire, and they basically put like a speed nut down on top of it, and that's where my extra resistance was coming from, which caused my fuel gauge to read 3/4 of a tank to full at all times. And I never was able to read 0 to 90 like I should have been able to. And we'll just go through a little exercise here with the ohm meter and show you how that works. While I'm at it, the new gauge sender, it comes pretty complete. It's got everything you need. It comes with the gasket. It's got a new sock on there, and it was only like $109, I think it was. So it's a pretty good deal. I actually got it through Amazon. I had an Amazon card, and I got the all this stuff through Amazon from Corvette Central. It ended up being a pretty good deal. So I'm going to put the camera here on the stand, hopefully without breaking anything. And we'll go through a little exercise with the resistance of those things with the ohm meter and all. Hopefully you'll be able to see this, what I'm doing. First we'll turn our ohm meter on. I have it set for 200 ohms, which I know these things should be 0 to 90. We'll actually do a little sanity check on the ohm meter. We'll short the leads. Should read close to nothing. It's reading about 0.7. That's just the resistance in the leads to the meter. And we'll go ahead and hook up the old meter. Okay. Between the ground and the pin that I showed you. And you'll notice that I'm reading pretty well open. No matter where my float is, reading pretty much open, which would give you a false reading of a full tank. And the other tip off also too is when the tank was full, the gauge was reading way over full, which tells me that I had a problem with the sender or the wire going to it. So now what I'll do is I'll leave my ground connection where it is, and I'll jump down here to the wire right on the potentiometer. I'll just touch it on there, and you'll see now with the float all the way at the bottom, which would be an empty tank, I'm reading about 12 ohms, which is reasonable. It should be close to 0. But as you fill the tank, or your float starts to come up, you'll notice that I'm reading a little over 90 ohms, 115, 114 ohms full, which is reasonable as well. But you can learn from this exercise that the problem is that connection. Nothing wrong with the potentiometer itself, just the connection between the pin, the input pin here, and this wire that goes up to the top. It's just 30-something years old, so it's going to have some extra corrosion on it and resistance, and that's what kills the function of your fuel meter. So I'm going to get this old one out of the way and I'll demonstrate the new one. Okay, here's the new one, and hopefully you can see this. There's the ground connection there. We'll make connection here to the pin that goes down to the potentiometer. And right off the bat, you'll notice that with the float all the way at the bottom, which would be an empty tank, I'm reading about 1.7 ohms. And as you fill the tank, the float comes up on top of the fuel level, and you notice at full, reading close to 90 ohms, which is what I should have. So this should correct my fuel meter problem. It's been a problem ever since I got the car, and I'm just now getting around to fixing it. Every time I'd go somewhere, I would just fill the car up because I was always afraid of running out of fuel. I had the car for just a couple days, and I was out driving it around and actually ran out of fuel, and I was still showing 3/4 of a tank. And then I determined what it was, and it just took a while to get to it. So now that I'm doing all this other stuff to the car, I decided I'd go ahead and fix this while I was at it, since all my other gauges and everything work and my instrument panel has been rebuilt. So hopefully you're able to see that. I noticed my meter slipped down a little bit. We'll do it again here just to demonstrate it. In your GM cars, you should have 0 to 90 ohms. That's been that way for many years. Nowadays, I noticed on my 99 Tahoe, the fuel gauge is actually a stepper motor that's driven by a PWM signal from the computer. It still does have a float, but it's a totally different resistance. It's like 0 to 250 ohms or something like that. So here it is again. We'll just make sure you can see the meter there. You notice it empty. I'm reading about 1.5 ohms or so, and then close to a full tank of fuel, you would be reading 90 ohms, very close to 90. So this is well within specification, much better than my other one. This one also mentions that this potentiometer here they put on this is a new style of potentiometer, which is more resistant to that ethanol fuel crap that we have to burn nowadays. So hopefully it will last another 30-something years, and by then somebody else will have the car and they can worry about it. So anyway, that's the end of this video. Just a little video showing the troubleshooting of a fuel meter and the new lights I'm going to be putting on. I'm sure I'll be making another video showing the lights installed and maybe operating. Take a look at that. Thanks for watching.